Very good evening class. Today is the class of MCQ class number 32 of the UGC-NET paper 2 mass communication and journalisms. So in the continuation of the mass communications MCQ classes, here we will also discuss some of the very important question in this today's class. So here we will start with the questions number 251. That is start with the communication chapter. So another communication is a receiver centric, sender centric, channel centric, and technology centric. Everybody, the question which it was asked in the July 2016 July paper. Everybody answer it. Very important and simple questions. Jaldi se answer karenge. You may take the time, but answer it right because it is very much important questions. Another communication is. So we were discussing another communication is the right answer. It is right answer जो है. Most of you are answering D. That the answer it is A. A जो है वो आपका right answer. Another communication it is that is receiver centric, right? So in the communication process, the receiver is the listener, receiver is the reader, receiver is the observer. Okay, that is the individual or the group of individual to whom a message is directed, right? एक sender है और एक दूसरा side में क्या है? receiver, right? हम sender को हम right communication मानते हैं, intrapersonal communication हो या receiver अपने end में communication हो. Another communication that sender becomes encoder, encoder becomes sender. So this is what the receivers, the receiver listener it is, receiver reader it is, receivers observer. In the terms of the mass communication, the reader is the रीडर जो है क्या है वो रिसीवर है, राइट? टेलीविजन के कंसेप्ट में देखें, टेलीविजन के कंसेप्ट में व्यूअर्स जो है वो क्या है? रिसीवर है, राइट? अगर हम इंटरनेट के कंसेप्ट में देखें तो वी द ऑडियंस, और या इन द टर्म ऑफ एडवर्टीजमेंट दैट द consumers are the receiver, right? So this is what that the receiver. Another communication is the receiver where listeners, receiver is the listener, receiver is the reader, receiver is the observer, right? Whom a message is directed. Another here it is important that is it written in the explanation that receiver is also called the audience or the decoder. The sender or of a sender of a message is completely when the receiver is other and receives it, understand it, and then sends the desired feedback to the sender. So receiver जब कोई भी communication कब successful होगा? When it is sent to the receiver and receiver understand the communications or the message and then he sends the desired feedback to the sender. This is what the communication, another it is the receiver centric, right? Everybody got it? जल्दी से बताएंगे. Next 252 number questions. Never do mistakes this type of questions because it is conceptual based questions. The term audience. The term audience is recognized dash of media consumer. The term audience is recognized dash of media consumers. Just think about the mass media. Think about the media consumers and their audiences. So here the options are homogeneity, the heterogeneity, the passiveness, and D, the resistance. Everybody answer it. This is very much conceptual questions about the audience of the media, the audience of the mass media. Everybody will answer. Very good. Absolutely. Everybody is answering. So right answer, it is very much important questions, that is heterogeneity, right? Very good. Heterogeneity is the right answer. The term audience is recognize the media consumers, it is heterogeneity. So the mass audience is large, that we know, right? Mass communication means the large audience, right? Mass communication means large audience, and the large audience that is heterogeneous, right? Heterogeneous in the nature or the anonymous in the nature, जिसे हमें पता नहीं होता है कितने मेल है कितने फीमेल है. For an example, how many male are reading the newspaper, how many females are reading the newspaper, what the age group of the people who is reading the newspaper, that you do not know in terms of the television also, so that we can say that the anonymous in the nature or the heterogeneous in the nature in the media audiences, right? So these the receiver are scattered across a given village, across the state or across the country. Receiver decodes the encoded content based on his or her social or the cultural background or the taste or the capacity of the interpretations, right? So this is what about that it is very much important to know that the receiver decodes their messages, the media messages, on the basis of their social and the cultural background, taste or the capacity of their interpretations. This is very much important for the assertion region questions, right? If they ask you like this is what the statement it is, right? This is assertion A, ये assertion A है, right? For an example assertion, it will be the mass audience is large, heterogeneous and anonymous in nature. Okay, anonymous in nature. This is what about your the statement. The statement is true or false. That is what this is true statement, because the mass audience is large or heterogeneous in the nature, right? Very good. So whenever you are solving the assertion region questions, just focus on the both of the statement first, whether the both of the statement is true or the false. After that, the second step is that you find it that the second statement that the region it is satisfying the A or not, right? The region is the correct explanations of the A or not. This is the second process. First, you have to know that the both of the statement is true or false. This is what the trick for the solving the assertion region questions. Okay, Chali. So next questions about the Lewis-Wirth and Talcott Parsons 253. Everybody. 253 number questions. Read it carefully and answer it. Lewis-Wirth and Talcott Parsons see mass communication as a tool of. Everybody, mass communication as a tool of economic control, B, social control, C, intellectual control, and D, political control. Everybody answer it. Very much important. The mass communication as a. That the right answer? Okay. So Lewis-Wirth and Talcott Parsons see mass communication as a tool of social control, that you have to remember. Okay. See, researcher must see the mass media as an instrument of social control or the social change that may have either positive or the negative consequences, depending, right? This is very much important. Focus it, right? Because in the mass media national development, Wilbur Sram ने जो लिखा है book, in that book it is also that it is mentioned that media, the mass media and national development, because we know that the media brings a change, right? Media leads the development towards the nation, right? Development of the nations. This is what about the media, the power of the media it is, right? So the Lewis-Wirth and the Talcott persons see the mass communication as a tool of social control, because here it is written in the explanations that researchers must see the mass media as an instrument of social control and the social change that they have either positive or the negative consequences depending on their organization and the content, right? So the Lewis-Wirth along with the Talcott Parsons have emphasized the significance of the mass advertising as an instrument associated with the social control. Whether you talk about the advertisement, right, which comes under the mass communication, or you talk about the newspaper or the televisions, basically their purpose as a tool to social control, right? That the mass communication as a tool of social control. Very good. Chaliye. Next question 254. When the consequences of the exposure to a communicated message get delayed, it is known as. We have discussed this question without options that I want answer from everybody. Jaldi se. Yes, very good. Rachna and Abhishek has answered correctly, right? So this is what the answer it is, right? So if nobody has seen this type of question which we have discussed in the previous classes, right? So देखिए ऑप्शन है ये, एक्सपोजर लिमिट, डेफर्ड इफेक्ट, रिस्ट्रिक्टिव लिमिट, स्लीपर इफेक्ट। एवरीबॉडी, डिलेड मैसेज, जहां पर मैसेज गेट डिलेड का अगर कोई टर्म आता है, डेफिनेटली इट इज विद द स्लीपर इफेक्ट। वेरी गुड, मन में अगला है दैट कार्ल हॉवलैंड ने स्लीपर इफेक्ट को टर्म दिया था, राइट? वेरी गुड, दैट द राइट आंसर, वेरी गुड, एब्सोल्युटली। सो ये ध्यान रखेंगे, ठीक है, स्लीपर इफेक्ट। यहाँ पर स्लीपर इफेक्ट्स को हम जानने के पहले हम ये आपसे जानना चाहते हैं कि एवरीबॉडी टेल मी सम लाइंस अबाउट द स्लीपर इफेक्ट दैट वी हैव डिस्कस्ड इन द लास्ट क्लासेस, राइट? प्रीवियस क्लासेस में जो हमने डिस्कस किया है, एक तो आपने बताया फर्स्ट, दैट इज कार्ल हॉवलैंड, ओके, द कॉन्सेप्ट इट इज गिवन बाय द कार्ल हॉवलैंड, एवरीबॉडी। Number B, about the more it is about, that is also important, that delayed masses that you know, delayed masses. Showing here the explanations, and in the explanations, many of the things it is written, just remember it and tell me, right, what the important it is in the explanations about the sleeper effect that we have mentioned here. Delayed masses that is related with the some Carl Hovland where focus on the attitude change, right? The first it is important that attitude change and persuasions, the concept it is, right? Attitude change and persuasions. If the question it is asked in the match of the following questions, that Carl Hovland it is given in the column A, and attitude change and persuasion it is given in the column B, directly immediately match with the these two terms, right? Carl Hovland with the attitude change and persuasions, right? No immediate effect, but can have the effect in the long run. Very good, very good. That's what about the sleeper effect. So here it is important that Frank Capras, right? He first reported the sleeper effect after the studying. Please read it line that we have discussed, right? ये हमने डिस्कस किया हुआ है, अगर आपको याद हो रहा होगा तो definitely that we have discussed this line. This is very much important. He first reported the sleeper effect after the studying the effects of the Frank Capras propaganda film. Okay, क्या था वो प्रोपागेंडा फिल्म एवरीबॉडी? फ्रैंक कैप्रास का प्रोपागेंडा फिल्म, जिसके देखने के बाद वो स्लीपर इफेक्ट को उन्होंने समझा. So question can be also that name the Frank Capras propaganda film on which the sleeper effect was studied by the Carl Hovland. Okay, so this is what the Frank Capras propaganda film, that is Why We Fight on the Soldiers in the Army, right? This is what important it is. That is, he first reported the sleeper effect after the studying Frank Capras propaganda film Why We Fight on the Soldiers in the Army. That is what the sleeper effect, right? Yes. And another important that it describes the phenomenon in which masses from the sources with originally low credibility cause opinion changes over the time, right? So this is what here important, that in the sleeper effect, what causes the opinion change over the time? Everybody, that is low credibility, right? Very good. That low credibility causes the opinion change. आपको बहुत ही कम विश्वास रहता है या कम किसी चीज पे विश्वास रहता है, इसके कारण हमारा जो है क्या हो जाता है चेंज, दैट वी आवर ओपिनियन और द एटीट्यूड चेंजेस, राइट, बिकॉज ऑफ द लो क्रेडिबिलिटी. दिस इज व्हाट अबाउट द स्लीपर इफेक्ट, राइट? बाद में उस चीज को रियलाइज होता है हमें, राइट? व्हाई वी फाउट ऑन द सोल्जर्स इन द आर्मी, दैट वाज रिफ्लेक्टेड in this film, propaganda film. Okay, chaliye, it is all clear everybody? This is very much conceptual questions and every should be clear. Okay everyone. John Fiske considered speech as a options are non-contiguous code, B social code, C unreal code, and D disabling code. Everybody answer it. John Fiske considered speech as a, yes, very good, that the right answer. Social code. Okay, social code जो है वो जॉन फिस्के considered speech as a social code, very much important. कैसे social code? This is what the reality, right? Focused on the reality is which is understood as a social code. So reality is already encoded by the social code such as dress, मेकअप, स्पीच और द जेस्चर्स. ओके, इन्होंने एक टेलीविजन कल्चर को लेकर लिखा है बुक, राइट? द टेलीविजन कल्चर, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बुक, टेलीविजन कल्चर, ऑथर्ड बाय द जॉन फिस्के, राइट इट, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. टेलीविजन कल्चर, द बुक रिटन बाय द जॉन फिस्के इन द टेलीविजन कल्चर. टेलीविजन के कल्चर में इन्होंने बताया कि कैसे जॉन फिस्क की जो स्पीच को वो क्या कंसीडर कर रहे हैं, सोशल कोड कंसीडर कर रहे हैं. क्यों? वाई ही इज कंसिडरिंग द स्पीच एज ए सोशल कोड? बिकॉज सोशल codes here includes the dress, right? The dress which speaks, the makeup which speaks, right? The speech which speak, right? The gestures. This is very much important. All these things, that social codes, right? That we live in the society, right? That we reflect our social systems in terms of the culture, in terms of the food, in terms of the dresses, in terms of the behavior, in terms of the environment, right? In terms of the dresses. This is what about that we represent our cultures through the dresses, makeups, gestures, environment, behavior. This is what about, right? That you know by the gestures that कि हरियाणा में ऐसा क्या कहा जाता है, ऐसे अगर जोड़ लें तो जस्ट नमस्कार, right? This we called as an Indian, that when we do namaskar, right? So this is what we consider as an India. This is what about the social code, that it is the important. It is that the John Fiske considered a speech as a social code. So up here it is also important. It is given that appearance, dress, makeup, environment, behavior, speech, gestures, expression, sound are encoded electronically by the technical codes that we seen in the television, right? This is what about the technical codes. In his book Television Culture, John Fiske said an event to be televised is already encoded by the social codes, right? So this is what about the an event. It is saying that इवेंट जो है वो जो टेलीवाइज होता है, दैट इज ऑलरेडी इनकोडेड बाय द सोशल कोड्स, राइट? दिस इज व्हाट इंपॉर्टेंट अबाउट द सोशल कोड्स विच रिटन बाय और गिवन बाय द जॉन फिस्की. क्लियर है? जल्दी से बताएंगे. इट इज ऑल क्लियर. नेवर एवर फॉरगेट अबाउट द जॉन फिस्के, बिकॉज जॉन फिस्के ने कल्चर्स के ऊपर बहुत काम किया है, टेलीविजन कल्चर्स के ऊपर काम किया है, तो सोशल कोड ही है, राइट? यस, पॉपुलर कल्चर ऑल्सो, पॉपुलर कल्चर, राइट? वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट. The next question, it is here. The truth of the statement is not a defense against defamation, the breach of privilege, official secret violation, D, contempt of court. Everybody answer. The truth of the statement is not a defense against. Yes, very good. That's the right answer, D. Very good. Media law ethics, very much important. The truth of the statement, किसी भी स्टेटमेंट का ट्रूथ होना, दैट नॉट द डिफेंस अगेंस्ट द contempt of court, right? The contempt of court, that 1971, in the contempt of court 1971, the section 13 it speaks, right? Section 30 it provides the truth as a defense of the contempt, right? Truth as a defense of for the contempt. But here that it is asking about the truth of the statement is not a defense against what, then against it is also the contempt of the court, and it meets the two conditions, right? Here in the case of indirect tax practitioners associations versus RK Jain, right? The court highlighted that the truth should ordinarily be allowed as a defense unless the court finds that it is only a camouflage to escape the consequences of deliberate or the malicious attempt to scandalize the court or is an interference with the administration of justice, right? कोर्ट अगर कोर्ट को ज्ञात नहीं, अगर कोर्ट को नहीं पता है, जब तक आप, दैट इज व्हाट अबाउट, आप अपना ट्रूथ स्टेटमेंट का बचाव कर सकते हो, राइट? सो दिस इज व्हाट अबाउट. यहाँ पे भी दो कंडीशन, अगर कोर्ट को ज्ञात हो गया तो फिर वो कोर्ट आपका नहीं छोड़ेगी, आपको उसका पनिशमेंट आपको मिलेगा ही मिलेगा, राइट? सो दिस इज व्हाट अबाउट द ट्रूथ ऑफ द स्टेटमेंट इज नॉट अ डिफेंस अगेंस्ट द कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट, राइट? कोर्ट की अवहेलना में आप किसी भी स्टेटमेंट का ट्रूथ जो है कोर्ट के अगेंस्ट में आप नहीं हो सकता है, वो डिफेंस नहीं हो सकता है. ओके, सो दिस वाज द क्वेश्चन दैट वी डिस्कस्ड इन द टुडेस क्लास. वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन, दैट वेरी शॉर्ट क्वेश्चन दैट वी डिस्कस्ड. ठीक है, तो जल्दी से समराइजेशन के पार्ट में आते हैं. एवरीबॉडी, कॉन्सेप्चुअल बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस है, राइट? 5 to 6 क्वेश्चन दैट वी आर डिस्कसिंग, बट दैट इज वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट टू डिस्कस बिकॉज इट इज. सो डिफेमेशन आपको पता है एवरीबॉडी. एक बार समराइजेशन से पहले दैट वी विल डिस्कस हियर defamations, everybody. Section 499 or punishment, about the punishment, everybody. Punishment is mentioned in the section Official Secret Act, everybody. 1923. इसके इंपॉर्टेंट कौन कौन से जल्दी से बताएंगे? सेक्शन 3 एंड Section 4. Read it carefully, right? Section 3 and section 4. Very much important, right? Very good. Spying. Contempt of court, that is 1971, right? Very much important. And also read the important sections under the contempt of court, right? Very much important. सभी में जितने लॉज हैं वो सभी लॉज के आप कुछ कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट सेक्शंस हैं उसको डिस्कस कर लीजिए, राइट? एज वेल एज द civil and criminal contempt, right? Very good. So let's talk about the summarizations, everybody. 𝗁𝗂𝗏 sleeper effect, right? Very good. Sleeper effect. Another communication is the receiver centric. Another communication, receiver centric. Third, that is John Fiske social code. Okay. Lewis and Talcott Parsons. Everybody, Lewis and Talcott Parsons का बताइए जल्दी से. Social control. Very good. Social control. Yes. Number 5 that we discussed, television culture, that the book it is important. Television culture, John Fiske, right? That's about that truth of the statement is not a defense against contempt of court, right? Truth of the statement is not a defense. Remember it. Defense. Truth of the statement is not a defense, okay? Against the contempt of court. Yes, heterogeneous audience. Heterogeneous audience, that was about everybody. What was the questions that? Yes, mass audience or the mass media, right? Very good. Mass media audience. Yes. Next that we discussed, everybody. Or भी था important, that name the film, that propaganda film, why we fought on soldiers. Very good. In army, right? And that propaganda film, yes, of the Frank Capra. Okay, very good. Frank Capra, right? Very much important. That is all done. Okay, so this is what about the John Fiske, that the important it is that we discussed today's. The Talcott and Parsons, that is important today that we discussed. Very much important. That was the new Talcott Parsons. Okay. And this is what about the receiver centric communication, that is known as another communication, that is was very much important. And this is what the revision of the classes of the sleeper effect that we discussed in the previous classes about the sleeper effect by the 𝗁𝗂𝗏 and their propaganda film of the Frank Capra, that is why we fought on the soldiers in the army, right? So this is all that things that we have revised here. So this is what important it is in the today's class, right? Very good.